Well, let's see, it just rolled over to the 7:30 mark, so let us begin on this another Wednesday where we can gather together via this format and I'll share some thoughts with you and some prayer requests, and we can pray together. And I pray the Lord uses it well and that we will be benefited by sharing a few moments together. Um, so I was giving some thought to what I wanted to share this evening. If you've been listening, you know I've been on a theme for many weeks now of the day of the Lord. And now that we have moved into the New Testament phase, of course, that speaks of that final day of the Lord, which is yet to come. Now, whether or not there are other days of the Lord, it is my belief that there are. God dealing with various people and various people groups uh, for good or for ill. And of course, it is not a simplistic formula of, well, if you behave yourself, then everything's going to be sunshine and roses. And if you're bad, then it's going to be dark clouds and rain. It is certainly not that formulaic nor simplistic. For instance, I have mentioned, I came across an article, it's been, oh goodness, I guess a few weeks ago, about the persecution of believers in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and certainly want us as believers to be lifting them up. Now, recently, in the last couple of days, there has been a slaughter in the nation of Syria, a jihadi persecution of Christians. Indeed, these areas of the world are very complicated. I do not pretend to have a grasp on the geopolitical ramifications, but the simple reality of people losing their homes, their families, their lives because they name the name of Christ. I know that we are called to, at the very minimum, let's lift them up in prayer, praying for God to look down. And I know sometimes He allows His people to suffer greatly, but when we are faithful to Him in persecution, good will ultimately come of it, both in this life and certainly the life to come. And we are all headed towards that final day. I've mentioned before that wondrous, glorious, or traumatic and unfathomably dark, if you are not prepared, reality that this life ends here. I mean, we're going to get, I calculated it earlier today, I believe. Most of us are going to get about from 25 to 30,000 days, based on a 70 to 80 year lifespan. Of course, these are round numbers. A few are going to get a little more. Very many will get far less. And in this sojourning here of the days that we have lived, how many of them do we remember? And what makes them memorable? What makes a day memorable It's what happened on that day that so impressed your heart, your soul, your emotions that you recall it. You hang on to it. Most days are kind of a blur. They run together. We do what we have to. We meet our responsibilities. We pay our bills. We take care of ourselves. We bathe and brush our teeth. Well, at least some of us do. We do the things that keep life going on. And that's by God's design. He told Adam and Eve, you're going to sweat. You're going to labor. The earth is going to grow briars and thorns, and you're going to have to pull them up and plant some beans and okra. I don't know where that came from. I got okra on my brain. But in those days, there are some that stand out. I mean, perhaps your wedding day, and hopefully that is a good memory. Birth of a child, promotion, a dream job, things that happen that so impress us that we remember them. And of course, sometimes that is negative. When we suffer loss of a loved one, loss of health, it can so impact us that day stays burned in our memory. But it is a handful of days that stand out. And if you know a special day is coming, well, there's a lot of preparation goes into it. If a wedding, for example, a whole lot of planning, whole lot of talking, whole lot of, do we pick this one or that one? Do we do this? Do we do that? What is the perfect shade of fuchsia that is going to match the color of my hair? And we put a lot of preparation into it. If you having a child, I hope you take it seriously and put some thought into it and do some preparation for it. Think about, how am I going to raise them? How am I going to love them? How am I going to nurture them? And a lot goes into it because this is a special event, a special day. Something as simple as a vacation. If you have a particular vacation that you're wanting to take, you're going to put a lot of preparation into it, a lot of planning. You're going to have an agenda. You're going to map. You're going to pack. You're going to have your list to go through to make sure you're not forgetting anything. You're going to call and verify reservations, whatever it goes into to make it a successful trip. How much more so should we be preparing for this final day of the Lord? For all of us will have that day for when we stand before Him. And God is working in this world now, will be working until the end. And Matthew 24 and 25, I've recently kind of looked at it as the how-to passage of preparing for the final great day of the Lord. And how did God start off? How did Christ start off teaching? Well, first and foremost, and I won't reread it, I've read it for a couple of weeks now. In the first part of chapter 24, what is the major theme? Beware of false teachers. Beware of false Christ. Do not be deceived. Now, are there false teachers? Indeed, there are. There have been. There will be. There's coming the great false teacher, the beast and the Antichrist, who will deceive the nations. But until then, there are many smaller antichrists that are deceiving groups, individuals, churches, nations, people groups. Now, here I am. It's almost ironic to me, because if someone is disagreeing with me, they're going to call me a false teacher. And I will look at them and point the finger and say, no, you're the false teacher. So in this disagreement of voices, how do you discern? How do you know? How do you know if someone is a false teacher? Well, I've got a big answer right here beside me. Now, right here in my lap. There is no getting around the necessity of the Word of God. It is God's greatest gift outside of the person of Christ that He has given mankind. But just owning it is not enough. Even reading it, as important as that is, we must be guided by the very Spirit of God if we are to comprehend it and apply it. We are responsible for what God has given us. And I have verbally chastised many times this land. Really, I had to lump myself into. Has there ever been a people with more opportunity, more knowledge, more information, more accessibility to the Word of God? We have resources. We have conferences. We can dig as deep and as long as we can endure. So we have a responsibility to put the good stuff in our hearts and our minds and to discern truth from a lie. To speak boldly, openly, to question honestly. And I've stated many times, there's nothing wrong with questioning the Word of God if you truly want an answer. See, far too many question, but they've already determined the outcome. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Let me jump into Matthew 24. He speaks in verse 21 through 28, I read last week, of the great tribulation that is yet to come. He speaks again of false teachers and false prophets that will arise during that time. But the truth is, they have been from the beginning and will be until the end. But in verse 29, but immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. And then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send forth his angels with a great trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. What a day. What a day. Now, I love studying eschatology. It's very interesting, difficult. And if you haven't done it, I would Challenge you to do so. But don't just pick a book and read it, though that can be helpful. Take all the scriptures and put them side by side, and then make your own timeline, if you will. Not that timelines are important, but the reality of what he has made clear. Now that is very clear, what I just read. What is the reality? There's going to be a great tribulation. The very heavens are going to be affected. The cosmos as we know it are going to be altered. Of course, that's no, and I understand, the naturalists, the heathen of the world are going to scoff. That can't happen. That's not going to happen. And even some who profess Christianity are going to say, it's metaphor. Them, I would just say, well, we'll see. What is so wondrous about the Creator intervening in his creation? Is this any less wondrous than the very tenets of our faith? The death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and the general resurrection of all the saved to eternal salvation, the lost to eternal condemnation. When you consider those realities, these realities, the sun being darkened, the moon not giving its light, really seem, they're impressive. But that's just for God showing forth, here it is time. Just as when he came down to Israel with thunderings and lightnings and voices from heaven and the cloud upon Mount Sinai. That was not God showing off. It was him saying, here I am. Here, acknowledge me. Here's my signs. Here's my evidence. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. Now, isn't that sad? All the tribes of the earth will mourn. Why? Because the very message that they have rejected is now proven true. The wondrous realities that they scoffed at are now being manifested. So how do we prepare for the day of the Lord? Well, point one, I'll reiterate, beware of false teachers. Point two, be assured of its reality. It is coming. That song of what a day it will be when my Jesus I shall see, and I'll look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. There shall be a day, and it is coming. May we be ready, preparing, and living in light of this wondrous reality. So I'm going to pause the teaching there. We'll pick up some more in the weeks to come, going through the rest of chapter 24 and into chapter 25 for those of you who want to join. And I had the prayer list right here in the front of this folder. I thought, no, I don't. Well,